For my narrated presentation final, I chose the banned book Milk and Honey. This book has recently been banned in many Texas schools and is continuing to trend as a book that is being banned within high schools. This is Sour Milk and Rotten Honey, a narrated presentation on the banning of a certain poetry book and exactly why it is getting banned. Rupi Kaur's Milk and Honey holds many themes about growth and womanhood. There are many different dynamics in Milk and Honey that Kaur incorporates into the structure of her poetry. She touches on her own personal battles with sexual assault, violence, and relationships. Readers get to see everything from doubt, anger, sadness, and recovery as Kaur writes. Through poetry, Kaur demonstrates the grieving process in a way that stays with a reader. Within this book, I found two historical themes behind Milk and Honey. I found the sinful child and the developing child that kind of connected in the middle a little bit as I read in. Because of how this book is structured as poetry and the themes I found within it may be unique to others' ideas. With the sinful child, I found that in children's literature, the sinful child is portrayed as a guide for children as what not to do when growing up. This influences their standards and how they act to either match or be opposite of these sinful child characters. A book that we as a class previously read, The Whipping Boy, is a perfect example of the sinful child as a historical theme in children's literature. Through the Introduction to Children's Literature textbook, I found a mention that illustrates the sinful child theme. Quote, manifestations of this notion of childhood sin might take more secular forms, couched in the pseudo-psychological language of impulse, control, and developmental immaturity, or in the pseudo-psychological language of savagery or untamed wildness, end quote. Through these quotes from Milk and Honey on the right of the page, we can see how Kaur was affected from her traumatic childhood. The second theme that I found was the developing child. The historical theme of the developing child reflects how children mature over time as they grow up and become adults. This is either by their experiences or exposure to life events that shape their maturity. Another quote from the textbook that I found that matches this theme is, quote, the developmental approach understands children as immature or developing beings who are slowly moving toward adulthood in a mostly unbroken line. There are three quotes that I found from Milk and Honey on the right side of the page. I do have the last two mixed up on accident. They are supposed to be in numerical order. These three quotes from the book I found demonstrate how Kaur's maturity has grown. From the beginning, we can see she's rather desperate for this person in her life, and as she moves on to the end, she realizes that she does not need and that this person is only hurting her. Moving on to the free verse poetry, this is the genre of Milk and Honey. There's rhythm between poems and a connecting factor to bring it together for the reader to understand the main message of the whole book. There's no rhyme to these poems, but it does hold a strong meaning. The poems all go along with each other, which makes the book so aesthetically pleasing. There is still exposition, conflict, rising action, climax, and falling action evident in the book, but it is harder to categorize. Everything seems kind of scattered with Kaur's response to life events, but we see a constant bouncing back between conflict and climax. Resolution does come at the very end with Kaur's last poem entry for the book. On the right side of the page, quote, you split me open in the most honest way there is split a soul open, and forced me to write in a time I was sure I could not write again. Thank you. End quote. Continuing on to the next slide of free verse poetry, the free verse flows together so that each poem complements the other as it continues on. We can see the duality of emotions that Kaur is feeling as she goes through the grieving and recovering process after her assaults and relationships. These two quotes on the slide are within the same paper, And I believe that they demonstrate exactly what I mean by they are so different, but so connected. On the left, we have, quote, "Rivers fall from my mouth, tears my eyes cannot carry," end quote. This is a rather sad and just emotional quote. And on the right, quote, "You are snakeskin, and I keep shedding you somehow. My mind is forgetting every exquisite detail of your face. The letting go has become the forgetting, which is the most pleasant and saddest thing to have happened," end quote. Now the second quote is more of a realization. It is connected, where she is still so emotional that she loves this person. She loves everything about it, what they do for her, but she knows that it is bad and that she has to let it go, but her mind is just not letting her, and it creates this sadness that kind of tears at her. Where it may have gone wrong, sour and rotten. These are some disputed quotes from Milk and Honey. I will let you go ahead and read some of these if you feel. I will continue talking. There's a common connection between these quotes. A lot of it has to do with sexuality. Milk and Honey is a very open book about sexuality and what it is and what sexuality should not be taken as. A lot of these are rather graphic in argument. The picture on the top right is also a very disputed image, but it does hold the meaning of the quote in between. Quote, "You have been taught your legs are a pit stop for men that need a place to rest, a vacant body empty enough for guests. But no one ever comes and is willing to stay." The photo helps create this powerful message of the text, which I believe it would not be the same without. Expanding on disputes against Milk and Honey from outside resources. As told by students at Roseburg High School in Oregon, parents sent in concerns about photos in the poetry book that were taken out of context and posed as quote-unquote pornographic. Cody Lyons, a student reporter at Roseburg, stated that the drawings within Milk and Honey are not pornographic, but used to express Coe's personal experiences in a toxic relationship with sex and love. Quote, "The sole purpose of the book was a young woman's choice to write poetry to help her heal from the past," Lyons wrote in an article in 2021. An article from NBC News when they reported on Rupi Kaur's own reaction to the banning of her book Milk and Honey after she posted on Instagram addressing the matter. Quote, "I remember sitting in my school library in high school, turning to books about sexual assault because I didn't have anyone else to turn to. This is the reality for many students. We all find comfort in literature that reflects our own experiences. Now that books about sexual assault and other topics are being banned, I worry for students who rely on school libraries for access to literature." Continuing on within the same post from Instagram that Cole posted, "It deeply concerns me that there is a group of people hell-bent on taking away literature that students find refuge in. Parents want to ban books to protect their kids. Many actually seek these books out because they're going through those experiences themselves." This was all found on Coe's Instagram. I do not have the link to that as my computer will not let me access Instagram, but it is more than likely found there. Continuing on to my final and personal take on banning Milk and Honey. If you have not been able to tell throughout this book, I believe that Milk and Honey should be open to all students, high school age at least, middle school and younger grades may be restricted to parental permission if that is what helps float their boats. This might make it easier for parents to control when their children are exposed to this. But I do believe that high schoolers should have access to the poetry book without restrictions. Because as Coe said, I remember sitting in my school library in high school turning to books about sexual assault because I didn't have anyone else to turn to. many children do find refuge in finding things that have gone through the same experiences as them. And if that's a poetry book that may have one or two pictures that allude to something, I would say it's worth keeping it in the library. Here is my Works Cited page. I will also connect my presentation to this so that you are able to click on the links if you choose so. Thank you.